example of some of the over-the-top pitches you're hearing on Fox News right now. But that $1 billion has gone in an influence operation, very sophisticated, very systematic, not just onesies, twosies, but to basically change opinion or to influence opinion and then political action in the United States, sir?
Yeah, first of all, thanks so much for having me. But that's exactly right. That about $1 billion has been allocated for public diplomacy, Hasbara efforts abroad, not just in the U.S. But you can. I tracked about 100 million of those dollars has been spent under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, which is, as your viewers are probably well aware, this law that requires contractors, lobbyists of foreign governments to disclose what they're doing on behalf of foreign governments. So, yeah, it's a lot of money, and it's being used for a lot of things, influencing chatbots, paying influencers, reaching out to evangelical Christians, all kinds of things that we can get into.
Now, this is separate. I just want to make sure this is separate from AIPAC and money they put in either for lobbying or for giving money to political campaigns or for lobbying efforts on Capitol Hill, correct? This is a totally, and the reason people are kind of shocked by it, that they've had that, Israel's done that for years, people that are affiliated and support Israel done that for years, but this is a totally different bucket, correct?
That's exactly right. This is a totally new strategy that was largely in response to, I think, them realizing that they needed to put their thumb on the scale in a more meaningful way, like after just the precipitous collapse of American public support for the U.S.-Israel relationship. Whereas before they could rely on those organizations that you're describing, like AIPAC, like Christians United for Israel, that are American-led, American-funded. Now they have to the Israeli government is actually having to hire a lot of people under FARA, which they didn't do before.
But walk me through, well, in FARA, because I think there's more attention to these FARA laws today, people are realizing you could be prosecuted for this. I think people for years did this without doing it, that you could be prosecuted for this. And so now they're much more. But isn't this in response to, in fairness, isn't this a response to all of a sudden they were kind of overwhelmed by TikTok and Instagram of all these other influencers, some of which money may have come from the Gulf Emirates? Because remember, the theory of the war room, we ain't got any friends over there. The Gulf Emirates that we're defending, and you got all these bases over there, and kids are dying at these bases, are the same guys funding radical Islam here in the United States. They're not our allies, and we can't keep kidding ourselves they're our allies. The Israelis, wasn't the fact they got caught by surprise, particularly on TikTok and Instagram, of this kind of flood, of particularly of the early days of the Gaza war, that all of a sudden you can see it, particularly among young people, they started to shift dramatically on their support for Israel, which traditionally the country's just kind of had I don't want to say knee jerk, but it was just always Israel's our greatest ally, right? And all of a sudden they realized that with TikTok and Instagram, there was a very different message getting out there, and they were late to the party.
Yeah, to be clear, a lot of different countries engage in different kinds of foreign influence, and if you look at the top spenders, they're pretty much all Gulf countries. I've written about Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar. Those countries in particular are very invested in influencing elite opinion, American public opinion. I think that a lot of I will say, I think
hold on. I want to make sure. Hang on. I want to make sure I get this clear, because this is why you're such an important guy. You're covering it all. They're doing that so that we support them, but they're also trying to they're particularly with, you can see it in Texas and throughout the country, with this kind of what I call this Islamic invasion. The money's all coming from Turkey and Saudi Arabia and Qatar, particularly Qatar. But they're very active in the social media to influence American, not just opinion, but to turn it into political power, correct? Political power from the United States that supports them in the Gulf, correct?
All of these countries are very invested in winning over, exactly like you said, American public opinion, elite opinion. I mean, I think a lot of the response, though, to this precipitous collapse in American public support, I don't think you can just chalk up to foreign influence. Like a lot of it is very organic. Seeing the images coming out of Gaza, seeing churches being bombed. I know a lot of evangelical Christians have been very upset seeing what's coming out of Gaza. And then there are plenty of like America First, like very genuine America First concerns over the fact that Israel has played a role in getting the U.S. into this war with Iran. So I think a lot of those countries have that you mentioned have been active in this space. I haven't seen that they've directly paid influencers. That seems relatively new. But these countries definitely sponsor delegations of influencers to come over. Qatar's done that. Saudi Arabia has done that. So they're all very, very active in trying to win over these, important stakeholders.
Do we have enough to make it visible? First off, I think it should be banned, but to make it visible, is the foreign, because you said right now from the Gulf Emirates, in your research, I don't think any of the influence, the money that's going to people, and there is money going to people, is not fully reported. Do we have laws in the book so that the American people can say, hey, if it's the Israelis or if it's Qatar, I can fully understand that they're feeding me stuff that they want me to react to and to support them? Is there enough regulation of this that the American people would be able to say, hey, because we don't want to limit what people see, but when you see it, that, hey, somebody's giving me their point of view because they want me to report to respond to what they want to have happen.
We do, in the Foreign Agents Registration Act, like if you register as a foreign agent, you're given a packet full of instructions about how to comply with the law. And if you look at that, like it says that if you post online, for instance, then you have to always disclose that you are a paid agent of a foreign government. It's called a conspicuous statement. And if you look, some foreign agents actually do abide by this. If you look at like Rod Blagojevich, for instance, he's a registered foreign agent for Republika Srpska, and he's very transparent. Like whenever he posts on Twitter, he always says, I'm doing this because I'm a paid foreign agent. And that's part of the problem is like, something that Marjorie Taylor Greene has pointed out is it's so difficult to know who is paid and who's not in the foreign influence space. The problem is it's not enforced, right? There are a lot of influencers who are being paid, but we just don't know who they are. The same way when you're scrolling your timeline and you see an ad for, a pair of Nike shoes, and it says, this is an ad.
But hang on. You're saying $100 million. Let's start with what we do know, and if that's being enforced, then we start with what we don't know and it's not being. The $100 million, in fact, I think, and I was kind of shocked at this because I know Brad pretty well, but Brad Parscale, who was our head of digital in the first Trump campaign, I think even the second Trump campaign, there was some perturbation. I think he's still running. He's an expert. Brad's one of the smartest guys in the world of this. That's why he's always been part of the Trump movement. Brad, he and his partner bought Salem Radio, and Salem Radio, and people should understand this. They bought Salem Radio. I don't think they paid anything for the equity. They bought the debt at a huge discount. Why was that? Mm-hmm. Because the hosts at Salem Radio were not generating a big enough audience to really get the ad revenues to pay for it. So Brad Parscale, did they take, was it $50 or $60 million directly from Israel, and Brad actually registered as a foreign agent?
Yeah, so he registered as a foreign agent of Israel in September of last year, and his contract has been upped many times by the Israeli government. So initially it was for $1.5 million a month, then it was $3 million a month. Now he's getting $4.5 million a month. And yeah, he's doing a number of things for the Israeli government. He's been the largest recipient of these funds that are trickling down to American contractors working for the Israeli government. So over the course of a year, he's set to get just shy of $50 million.
Okay, 50 minutes. So I'm gonna hold you through the break. But if I'm listening to Salem Radio, did they have a disclosure that says that they are funded by a foreign agent of the Israeli government? I mean, you talk about there's regulations that they have to post it. If you have AM radio, which is still kind of from the Rush Limbaugh school of getting the word out, very powerful, particularly in the MAGA movement, particularly in rural areas, or did they have disclosures now on all their disclosures, including Scott Jennings and all these guys, Hugh Hewitt, that they are financed and basically kept alive by a foreign agent of money coming directly from Israel, sir?
They do not. And to clarify, though, so Parscale has a firm called Clock Tower X, which is the LLC that this $50 million is coming through. And Parscale is doing a lot of things on behalf of the Israeli government. One of the things is that he's carrying out a mass texting campaign. He's texting, what appears to be millions and millions of Americans, asking them about their views on Israel, lightly pushing, pro-Israeli narratives. He's also creating a number of websites on behalf of the Israeli government that talk about, how great of an ally Israel is, why it's important for the U.S. to support Israel in the war in Iran, all these different things. So those are two of the main things that he's doing. But there is this other element of, in the initial contract, he said that part of his work would be to integrate pro-Israel messaging into Salem Media. And
hang on one second. I want to fully develop this topic. Short commercial break where they talk to you about you talk to them about your current Medicare plan. About one of my favorite films, and you talk about this thing about being influencing and how controversial. So how much money has Salem actually gotten from this? I guess you're saying now up to $50 million that Parscale's taken as an agent of influence for Israel. And he signed government documents saying, hey, I'm doing it. I'm taking the money. So I want to make sure that I report accurately. He's doing influencer campaigns. Is he disclosing who he's giving the money to on the texting side, on the influencing side, on whatever they're doing on Twitter? Or is it just disclosing what he's doing at Salem?
Parscale has disclosed quite a bit about what he's doing. So the company that's carrying out the mass texting campaign is called Sparkfire Technologies. He's given them upwards of $5 million to carry out this campaign. I know a lot of people that have gotten these texts. They'll reach out. They'll say something like, "Hey,
do they disclose? Hang on. Do they disclose that they're agents of the Israeli government in the text?" They
do not, and that's a very important point. They'll reach out initially. They'll say something.
Whoa! Isn't that a violation of federal law?
So it appears as though, so basically they, at some point in the conversation, they will send a link to one of these pro-Israel websites that are created by Parscale. And if you click that website and go to the very, very bottom, and then you see a statement that says this is a paid campaign from the Israeli government. I don't know about you, but I typically don't click links from random chatbots that reach out.
But whose responsibility? It's not a self-reporting thing. Whose responsibility when you're a foreign agent? Who is supposed to be checking that and going to Parscale and say, hey, look, at the bottom of the 5th page is not good enough. You need it in block letters up at the top. Just like if Qatar's doing it or the CCP's doing it, it should be in block letters right up there so the American people, you shouldn't block the content so the American people can't say you should see it. You can weigh and measure it. But you should know if it's coming from a government that's paying the guy to do it. This is not just a group of Americans saying, hey, look, we support Israel. Let's put on a play, right? No. So whose responsibility is to enforce this?
It's the Department of Justice. And I think it's a very important point, though, that this is like not just an Israel specific thing. This is like if anyone is carrying out this campaign, they need to disclose that they are funded on behalf of a foreign government, that they're carrying this out on behalf of a foreign government. So, it's the Department of Justice's responsibility to ensure that different foreign agents are disclosing everything that they need to be. And, it appears to me as though Parscale in these texts is not meeting that threshold.
What would they do? They've taken $500,000 on Salem Radio. You said you even disclosed that. Do they put up any disclaimer at all on their website? They put up any disclaimer during their shows that we are partially funded or we are taking money from a registered foreign agent of the Israeli government, sir?
I haven't seen anything along those lines. But Parscale is clearly in a position to be able to integrate these pro-Israel messaging into Salem Media properties. He's the chief strategy officer over there. And he said that he hasn't really done anything related to Salem Media. But in his initial filing, he made very clear that that was one of his top priorities. And one of his closest allies just played a large role in the buyout of Salem Media about a month and a half ago.
Yeah. No, they bought it out. He and his partner bought it out. Qatar, whether it's New York City, the public education, I can tell you down in Texas, between Pakistan, Saudis, Turks, but really Qatar, we're getting flooded with propaganda about Islam and about the benefits of Islam. Is anybody in the Justice Department, if they're not self-disclosing, at least Pascal disclosed, so he's in public thing, I'm an agent of the Israeli government. There are there's tons of cash coming in from the Gulf Emirates, as you know. Is anybody enforce that? And do we need somebody, the Justice Department, say, hey, look, you got to get on top of this. They got people in the United States acting as their agents and not disclosing it, sir.
Definitely. There needs to be far more disclosure. I think we've seen just a lack of enforcement in this Justice Department, unfortunately, when it comes to foreign influence. We have laws on the books, but unfortunately, it seems like.
But hang on, but Biden didn't do it any better. My point is, it's kind of the apparatus. The apparatus is just not interesting. We see this in the disclosures of Pulte. Anyway, we got to bounce. I'm going to have you back on tomorrow. I got so many more questions, but I want everybody to read this report. And if Mo and Elizabeth and Grace can act as force multipliers, send it out to the posse. I need everybody to read it. Nick, you're going to be back on this tomorrow. Until that time, your social media, where they go to get your research, sir.
Yeah, the Quincy Institute, quincyinst.org. Plenty of good stuff there. You can read the entire report for yourself. The Eighth Front. You can also follow me on Twitter, Nick Cleveland Stout. I think my username is Nick_ClevelandS.
The Eighth Front. In fact, tomorrow I will start off by asking Nick, what is the Eighth Front? Nick, thank you so much for coming on today. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.